Nothing really to speak of because we have basically an empty Monday and Tuesday economic calendar. Later in the week we have PPI and CPI numbers, so they're face rippers. We have a bit of a premium gap opening here. All right, so mid gap is way down here. These two levels here I did. So we have the weekly inversion fair value gap in here. I'm allowing it to try to reach for that, see if it can get up in there and tap into that and see if they'll let it run a little bit lower after that into the gap. Notice that the bottom of that weekly inversion fair value gap here also has that little tiny separation between that candle's low, this candle's high, so that is a SIBI. So you want to have that annotated on your chart. We're just hitting it now. I very much prefer it hitting the weekly inversion fair value gap before selling off. Otherwise, I'd have to let it have another chance to run there. Not chasing anything. All right, so here's a 1 minute chart. We have not had any first presentation fair value gap yet. There is one obviously on that 15-second chart. So you want to annotate that. Small one right in here, small little fair value gap. All right, so I want to see it run up into that weekly inversion fair value gap in that orange shaded area. That would also be another run above these highs in here. It's a little too blocky in here, too consolidated. Even though it is a 15-second chart, we want to see some kind of disruption to the upside. So a little lackluster so far this morning. Nothing terribly exciting for the opening range. Opening range is between 9:30 and 10 o'clock, and the opening range gap is previous day's settlement to the close here to the open, the very first print at 9:30. So when you have your economic calendar with the PPI and CPI number, there's an absence of any real news drivers on Monday and Tuesday. You want to try to find your trades, if you're going to try to trade and avoid all of the huge volatility that is introduced by those reports. You simply just trade on the Monday and Tuesday of this week. Not to say you can't trade post CPI and CPI number, because I certainly will be. All right, we just touched the bottom of that inversion fair value gap. Again, that's this up here, okay? Nice little reaction so far. I'm just going to show the mid gap and have a little bit more real estate in the size of these candles shown. Mid gap is here for the opening range gap. Watching the breaker here on the 1 minute chart. We have the short term high, higher high, this down close candle. I'm watching how we behave and print around that. See how flat price is right now? Yes, it went up to a level we were looking for and anticipating, but it's just not trying to do much. Even the 15-second. We're inside the SIBI here, bearish order block. Not enough energy to the downside to get me interested yet. Meaning the short-term low here, the wicks came down and we had two of them. So it's not something that has me all that terribly excited. Meaning we could see one more punch into this high, a little bit higher than that. And then we'll have to see what the delivery is after that. Just relax. No need to rush out the gate to get the first one that comes in the first 10, 20 minutes. Not on a Monday. Not with a week like we're getting ready to see. I'll see all kinds of movement. So you want to note any anxiety you're feeling right now, or any kind of unwavering excitement about wanting to be in something right now. That's usually are not aware of what you're looking for. You're just trying to, like a dog, and that's usually what FOMO feels like for a trader that doesn't have a model, doesn't know what they're looking for, and just because these candlesticks are flicking up and down, there's no setup here yet. You just have to sit still, let it come to you. One of the best exercises you can do for yourself is physically sit still the first 30 minutes. Even if there is an ideal setup that you may identify or recognize, sit still. Don't do anything. Engage price after 10 o'clock. And do that for a few months and just really take inventory on how you feel. Are you feeling impulsive? Are you feeling reckless? You feel like you want to gamble? Those are wonderful observations to discover about yourself early on before you start trading with real money, because those are the very characteristics that will undo you and prevent you from finding success. But not enough's been taught about it. I mean, Mark Douglas' book and other people have touched very, very lightly on trade psychology and what are catalysts for people to go on tilt. How do you prevent it? What skill sets do you have to develop and muster before you end up in that situation where you have regret? And it's by journaling and tape reading. And anytime you feel impulsive or anxious, that you're afraid you're going to miss something, take a screenshot of the chart, take a screenshot of it, and then annotate that with simple words like anxious, feeling reckless, feeling impulsive, and then at the end of the session, and then look and see what price did actually after that moment. And you'll see many times what you were fearful of that you were going to miss wasn't even in the chart at all. And it desensitizes your whole, like this pursuit, I got to catch something, It goes away after you've conditioned yourself to say, look, I've been here before. It's just me wanting to do something. Even on a 15-second chart, which usually is very, very fluid for me. I can find a lot of setups on. It still just looks like a picket fence at the neighbor that doesn't take care of his yard. It's all tattered looking in here. I'd like to see it displace lower. Yeah, I'd like to see that because we have now had a body come down below the break, just this down closed candle here. I'd prefer to see it start to make a move lower and work towards these lows here. Because if we can get between here, if we can go between this low and the upper quadrant of the opening range gap, which is here, I'd like to see some kind of move lower here, and then either on the 1 minute chart or the 15-second chart create a fair value gap to watch price trade up into, and then try to make a run into mid gap. That's all I would look for today. And then if it wants to close more of the gap or go higher, so be it. But when I'm looking at price and I want to kind of frame up a setup that I'm willing to sit and wait for, that's what I would be looking for today. I would not be interested in chasing it going higher. We have too much of a gap opening higher. They're building a huge premium, and we're taking it back to a weekly objective, which is all of that range is a weekly inversion fair value gap. It's big. So I don't want to be up in here, trying to go long after we've opened up with such a large gap opening. I'm much more comfortable waiting for it to price in whatever premium it wants to put in price. I'm not willing basically to pay an exorbitant price for NASDAQ, especially on a day that there's no news until we get to Wednesday and Thursday. So that's a little bit better delivery. See how the bodies are like butted up and at the bottom of it and not just a wick. That's what I was saying about the break over here. I didn't like that there because while it did go below it, when we have such a premium opening, meaning that this is where Friday's settlement price is here and the first print at 9:30, the opening bell, that's your first traded price. The difference between that is so large. It's already built in an expensive price. So I'm not willing to buy that. And I'm comfortable letting it go. It's like anything else. If it's not your price, you're not going to pay for it. If you know you can get it cheaper, if you just wait a little while, that's what trading should be like. Why pay more for something you can get cheaper later on with less risk, with better visibility? Right now, you're trading inside of just one event of where we opened up. So now think about what I was talking about earlier about the breaker. Because we had these two wicks down here. It didn't show any kind of displacement lower. It just reached down just a little bit below it. And because of that, I was telling you, we're probably going to see one more drive above this into that weekly inversion fair value gap. Then we had this delivery here, and this is a 1 minute chart. So it was nice to see it deliver that body. Now leaving these kind of wicks inside of the inversion fair value gap, and if it runs below, that's a lot more meaningful, meaning that this candlestick here, treat that same down close candle as I was looking at that initially here. I wanted to see how we behaved when price traded to its low. Now this is a point of interest for me at that candle's low, because we have what? We have the high here, this swing low, and we ran up into that weekly inversion fair value gap. We butted up against the bottom of it with that candlestick body, indecisive candle, body saying no, I'm not really interested. Open wick into it here, and we're showing initial signs that it may want to drop. There's a gap in here. I'd like to see it get below that and show signatures of inversion on that and how we drive under here. And it may not. I'm just saying that that's what I'm observing. I get a lot of questions. What am I looking for? What am I waiting for? How do I frame a setup? What determines the setup? Most of which is how we open. If I'm trading the morning session, how we open in relationship to the previous day's settlement price, which is 4:15 p.m. And then the afternoon, I'm not so much concerned about the same things that the morning session provides me. There's other things, like I'm looking at how we trade in the afternoon lunch, but I look for things to frame price runs that make sense. So since we gapped up here and have a large gap below us from Friday's close at 4:15, any movement below here sets the stage for a potential trade to half of the gap. So the rules I live by is 70% of the time that half gap price level gets traded to and repriced to in the first 30 minutes of trading. 70% of the time is not 100% of the time. So because we have the economic calendar as we have this week, where Monday and Tuesdays kind of like blank, it doesn't have a whole lot of reason to do anything yet except for build in a big premium for PPI and CPI number to run against this. So in my mind, that's how I'm interpreting this. And I think all of this is just them going against last week's big drop and going up into a logical level, which is that weekly inversion fair value gap. It's that orange shaded area. I'm watching this 15-second gap right here. It's also a breaker. So we have high, low, higher high inside the inversion fair value gap. The absence of anything on the economic calendar Monday and Tuesday forces me or forces a price action trader to demand that price be clean, versus I can engage with a little bit sloppier price action if there has been something released at like 8:30, or if it releases at 10 o'clock, some kind of economic news driver. Some kind of report or something. Basically like a smoke screen. That's why I call it an injection of volatility. It's an invitation for people to come to the watering hole. So we don't have that today, and we don't have that tomorrow. So the best thing you can do as a trader, and put this in your journal as well, and you'll probably save yourself a whole lot of heartache and drawdown and probably blown accounts. But the absence of anything on the economic calendar, that means that you must absolutely see clean price action. Just because you have a high impact or medium impact news driver does not mean you're going to have clean price action. You can have really wild back and forth price action. And if that's the case, then you don't trade that either. So it's a lot of knowing when not to do something So demanding clarity in what you're looking for the setups and just letting it go, let it go, which is what an adult perspective would be. An adult would say, where's that pot holder at? Let me grab that because I ain't trying to get burned here. What are they doing? They're deferring their interest being satisfied with protection, trading price action when there's really nothing going on yet that is all that exciting. These are the things I do. I wait and I demand price. Give me what I would rather see. And that's unfortunately a skill set that wasn't there in the beginning. Like I was impulsive, reckless, and fearing I was going to miss everything. Don't make sense. Don't do it. So now think about what we've had so far this morning. Large range gap opening. That's this price here. Previous day's settlement down here on Friday. We had a short-term high formed here, a short-term high formed here, short-term high formed here, and once more up here. Whenever price is doing that, it's usually indicative of them engineering liquidity. Even though the moves aren't as pronounced as I'd prefer them to be, that could be very much what we're seeing here, where by creating these little tiny short-term highs, everybody wants to fill the gap. I mean, that's trading 101. If you know anything about trading the opening session, over the very few minutes of trading the gaps, they have a magnetic effect on price action. But not all the time. Not all the time. They can stay open for days. It could leave that gap entirely open for days. This, because there's a gap, doesn't mean it's 100% probability that it's going to fill it. But what I like to see is if it's doing things like this where it creates highs and they keep taking those highs, but it's not really running aggressively and showing big amounts of price runs. It's just going enough to take out the previous highs. Going just enough to take out the previous highs. So to me, when I see that stuff, I think that someone is taking the other side of that high being taken out. And when I see those types of things forming in price action, I start telling myself, if this is what I think it is, then it should start to show speed after taking the most recent swing high, which is this one here. We're a little bit deeper inside of that weekly inversion fair value gap. So I'm waiting to see, do I get that strong drop down? Because I don't want to sell into these highs here. I don't personally want to do that because they could just keep building this and building this and building this. And I don't think we're going to be here later in the week. Like I think we could be lower. So the absence of any kind of economic data Monday and Tuesday, and then you had that big storm of volatility that's going to come with this PPI and CPI number where like you can't safely trade them in advance because they're wild. Like they're immediate repricing and they're aggressive and they can hurt you very, very, very bad. If you're offside on something like that, you're getting crushed. And there's no helping, there's no saving you. It's just you're done for. So it's better for that report to come out and then give it a few minutes, 15, 20 minutes, and then see what's left for liquidity or inefficiency. Here, I think what they're doing is they're just retracing it against what we saw on Friday. I don't think we're going to see the entire range of Friday overtaken. There's a large pool of liquidity. See these lows here? It's an election year. I think we're going to see a lot of volatility around the end of second half of October and then obviously going into the rest of the year. But I don't see us going back over top of Friday's range. There's no reason to do that. But we can dig deeper into this weekly inversion fair value gap. As you see here, it's a separation between this candlestick low and this candlestick high. So it's just inside of this. After dropping a lot on Friday, it's reasonable to anticipate a retracement on Monday morning like that. It's reasonable to anticipate there's going to be a large range gap opening higher, or premium gap opening. That's a normal expectation. But you have to be cautious because this is a lot of range just to get to the midpoint of that, which is here. So it's trading to 791. It could trade another 100 points higher. And I don't want to try to be aggressive and try to sell short because I think I'm seeing, oh, they ran buy stop, so now it's going to reject lower. I got to see other things. And when I'm watching how prices are creating these short-term highs, I'm weighing out how does it deliver after it does it. Is it quickly trying to get away from it? Because if it's not, then it's probably going to keep pressing higher. And you don't want to try to sell short on a day where it's just, even though there's a large range gap opening and everybody wants to see the gap fill, that's the natural tendency for people that want to trade or day trade. They want to see this gap fill in. They want to see that. But what if it doesn't? And you just keep trying to sell short. I've done that as a 20-year-old. I did a lot of that in the bond market when I was first trying to learn how to trade it. One of the best things you can learn how to do is to just sit still. Learn to just be very, very still. Don't try to rush to do something. You make more money doing little or less, and you certainly keep profits longer by doing less. Doesn't sound like it should be like that. That's the truth. Okay, I like what we're seeing here. See how we had this high take out that one, and this high here failed. We broke lower below here, and then we're seeing the bodies even on the 15-second chart respect the lower portion of that inversion fair value gap. So that takes my attention back into the 1-minute chart. Learning to manage the fear of missing out is like, it's hard, folks. Like it is hard. There's really no way around it that makes it easier or faster. You just got to sit out here and watch price action. And even if you can't watch it live, if you want to record price action, I mean, obviously while I'm live streaming, you can look at what I'm showing you here, but eventually you're going to want to do this on your own and have a log of your own charts. I'm watching the wick here, the midpoint of that. I'm watching if there's any sensitivity around that. The recording of the key time frames that you want to watch, there's nothing better than watching the actual candlesticks paint and create the full range, like every fluctuation of every single price tick. You need to see that. So anyway, what I was saying earlier, as we were breaking down here and we were working off of this, I wanted to go back to that 1 minute chart, and I wanted to see how we were going to use this candle. Remember that high, that low here, didn't even get down to it. So we weren't even get down to the body of that candle or even make an attempt to go below it. We do have sell side building below these relative equal lows here, large liquidity resting below here. But now imagine if you were trying to sell short, thinking that, okay, it's taking the stops. Now it's really taking the stop. But that gap, it's got to fill it. I hurt myself a lot doing that. Eventually, you learn that this is not something I am not willing to buy it. This thing can go up to 18,900 today. I don't care. I'm not willing to pay that price, because if I pay that price, am I going to be comfortable holding that position? I'm not going to be comfortable holding that, because it goes against the very principle that I trade on. I have to buy discount. This is an expensive premium price in an environment that is being manipulated because we have two big impactful news drivers, the PPI and the CPI number. And for a new student hearing that, it sounds like, well, you're just making excuses. I can tell you where it created the setups, and you can see them yourself. I'm not willing to take that trade. And I get a lot of that question a lot. Like, how do you filter out the times where you want to be a buyer or seller when prices is doing certain things? Like, for instance, it opens and just keeps inching a little bit higher. I'm not willing to take that, but I'm willing to wait for the ones that work, that yield $100,000 and selling short on the 1 minute high of the day and trading all the way down to a deep discount. That's the stuff I'm willing to wait for. I'm waiting for very surgical, precise things to align. And if they're not there, I'm not here to try to do something for the sake of impressing every live stream. The trade executions videos, they're for that. But when we're in here watching price action and I'm trying to teach you how to manage yourself, manage your expectations and fear of missing moves. There's nothing to fear. There's literally nothing to fear. There's no regret about missing any kind of move. If it doesn't make sense and if it's too expensive, why buy it? If it doesn't make sense and it's too cheap, why sell short? It's very simple logic. It's not complicated, but that's what I live by. I live by that principle. And anyone else out there could be taking trades. And I'm sure, is there a time at which I would say, I'm not interested, I'm not taking any trades, given the way it is right here. We had a large gap opening and it's just digging into that weekly inversion fair value gap. At 11 o'clock, 11:15, I would usually pull the plug if I don't see something that makes sense where it starts to break down. Because my interest is this. I only need it to get into this area here. I don't even need it to get down to the mid gap. Like, I don't need that, because I'm certain that if we can get below this low here, it will give me a fair value gap. It'll give me a bearish order block. It'll give me a small bearish breaker. It'll give me a institutional order flow entry drill. It's something that I can key off of, either on a 1 minute chart or a 15-second chart. And that difference between this candle's low to 3/4 or half of the distance between the upper quadrant and the lower quadrant of that opening range gap. That's what I'm sitting comfortably waiting for. And if it keeps going higher away from me, fine. I don't care. I'm not losing any money. I don't have any anxiety. I have zero anxiety. My pulse is literally probably 60 beats or lower. I have no sense of urgency at all. None. And your trading needs to be like that. If you're watching price, or if you're trading and you're hearing yourself or you're feeling yourself, a lot of sympathetic sigh, that's your body's involuntary response to stress. And when you want to bring yourself down real quick, if you're feeling stressed, find a way to find yourself into a yawn. And if you're not physically doing a yawn, pantomime one as best you can. Stretch your arms out and do a yawn. What that does, it immediately resets your nervous system. I'd like to see it break down in here. Now, this turn, I'm going to see it make an attempt to get through that. And then if it does, we'll watch and see if we can get into here, because this is the area where I'm hunting. I don't care about being all the way up in here. It's not necessary. When we're tired, we're forcing ourselves to stay awake. And then what is our body doing as a response to that? You yawn. If you're having anxiety, if you feel like you're missing something, you're having FOMO, stretch yourself. Think about how good it feels to yawn. It's very relaxing. It's satisfying. But what's actually happening is your vagus nerve is being stimulated, which is a nerve that runs down from your brain behind your ear, down inside your neck, and it lays literally like a web across all of your major organs. So when you're stressed, it affects all your major organs. And that's why you feel terrible when you're in an anxiety attack or panic, and then you start feeling the body symptoms that cortisol, which is the chemical that's released after adrenaline, is in your bloodstream. And the whole time, if you don't have coping mechanisms to counteract that, you're not going to trade with a clear mind. You're not going to be able to manage your emotions. You're not going to be able to manage the physiological stress that you're placing on yourself. And if you continuously stay in that, you will eventually have heart attacks. You'll have strokes. You'll have things that are going to make you physically ill. So you have to relax, take a deep breath. And then when you think your lungs are completely full, try to suck in a little bit more air. So it's like, that's the empty. At least twice the amount of time that you breathe in slowly, your exhale has to be twice as long. And it's hard to do it in the beginning. If you're having a panic attack, it's really hard. But that will immediately reset your nervous system and cancel out your anxiety attack. I'm watching the breaker here, the high, the low, and the high. The anxiety of wondering, am I feeling the effects of being older? And it's my body really, because I wore my body down a lot with stress as a younger man. And that stuff has a residual effect that comes and pays dividends later on. So I'm teaching this to you now. You may not be thinking that it's something you need to worry about, but you do. And by being able to reset instantly our nervous system, 5-minute breathing of slow inhales, when you feel like your inhales at its fullest capacity, then try to suck in a little bit more in and hold it 4 seconds and then release it. It has to be at least twice as long as it took you to inhale. And it's not easy to do. It feels like you ain't breathing enough, but you really are. All right, we're digging down into that low now. And if you take your time when your exhales, if your exhales are slower than your inhales, you're activating the side of your nervous system that allows you to relax. It's real easy for a human being to activate its fight or flight. Stress, someone comes up and you think they're going to punch you, or if you get hit, if you have an accident, something scary happens to you, immediately your pulse goes up, you get an adrenaline injection, and the Creator gave us that ability to be able to fight or flight, run away or fight. Your senses are heightened because of the adrenaline. You're ready to use more strength and reserves in your muscles than you don't usually call for. So it's so easy to get in that state. And if you live in that state as a trader that is constantly just trying to chase something because you don't put the work in, trying to make a model, try to discipline yourself, you will condition yourself to always go into that fight or flight feeling, that sensation of I'm in an emergency when you're not. You're tricking yourself, telling yourself you're always in an emergency, and you wonder why you're always stressed out. But that goes away instantaneously once you understand how to control your breath, and your breath controls your pulse, and your pulse controls adrenaline and then cortisol. If cortisol releases in your body, you got about 20 to 30 minutes before that stuff burns off. You'll have fidgetiness, you'll have nervousness and shakes. Maybe you'll feel like you're sick to your stomach and you just don't know what to do and you feel like you're going to pass out. All these symptoms are a response to cortisol being in your body. But anxiousness starts with the adrenaline. The way you avoid having that ever occur in your trading is having a model, knowing what are you looking for? What are you waiting for? If you don't know what you're waiting for a jump scare. But in trading, you want it to be boring, absolutely boring. I'm watching the 15-second fair value gap here. I'd like to see it stay heavy and all that. But you have the ability to reset your nervous system, and it cancels out any anxiety because you have to first stop the pumping of the adrenaline and you have to stop the cortisol releasing in your bloodstream. Cortisol is your stress hormone. You keep pumping that into your body every single trading day, you're going to have heart disease. You're going to have hardening of the arteries because when cortisol is released in your bloodstream, the way your body repairs it is it lays down cholesterol inside your arteries and your blood vessels. And if you keep doing that, and on top of that, you eat unhealthy, you are going to have health deteriorate. And you want to be able to sit here comfortably and calmly, not worrying about what you should be doing because you should already know what you're doing. Waiting for a setup that's based on logic that you've worked on and framed without any necessity about being right. Being right is not what my goal is. I'm not teaching you to be right. It's important to be in control of yourself, and it's important to know what your model is in a written form. Know what it looks like graphically, like a diagram. What does it look like in price action? Draw it out. If you can't draw it out, then you don't know what it is. You can't recognize it, and it may not look exactly like it would in price action. But to someone that trades, we would understand exactly what that is. But someone that's not a trader wouldn't understand what you're drawing. But controlling your breath and controlling your thoughts. Trust me, if you've never had a panic attack, it's a very scary feeling. But as soon as you know that it's just that, and it's not something like a medical emergency, you can immediately turn it off. The easiest way to stop it is slow your breath. You can do things like box breathing. The best thing I do for me, and box breathing doesn't work for everybody, but I usually do a 4 to 5 second slow inhale. And then when I feel like I have my lungs at full capacity, I do that one more little sniff to get the last piece of empty space in my lungs, and I hold it for 4 seconds. And when you first do it 3 times, there you go. That's what I'm looking for right there. Now we can watch below this low. So this line here, this blue line, is this line here on the 15-second chart over here. And this is the upper quadrant of the opening range gap. That's this over here on the 1 minute chart. See that? And then we'll do we'll annotate the mid gap here. So I would very like to see if it can touch that 604.75 level. But if you notice that same 604.75 level has a little gap in there on the 15-second chart, I'd like to see it bump this candlestick's high right here on that line, just to hit that and then see if we can roll over from that. I'd say institutional info entry trail right there on the 1 minute chart. The level of fear and FOMO that you're going to feel is going to be directly related to the expectations that you hold over yourself. If you want extremely high output and results, and you're not equipped with a model, you're not equipped to have a well-rounded model that you can anticipate seeing and forming, and you know when it usually forms, what time of day does it form, how does it behave in price action. If you don't have those things, your anxiety is going to be through the roof. So institutional order flow entry here on the 1 minute chart. Watch this little section right in here. It's all part of this move here. I like to see the second lower half of that. Keep price at bay. See if it stays heavy, and then we can see if it runs down into the mid gap. Watching that 15-second chart here, we got institutional order flow entry drill here, and mid gap is down here. And again, that's this level. It's half of the gap up this move from Friday's settlement price and the opening up here. See how we're using that upper quadrant level there? So you had a fair value gap here, closed in, half of the gap, worked it here, went lower. Same old stuff all the time, every single day. And when you realize that these things can repeat, you know how to wait for the setups to form, and you control yourself. You don't try to predict the euphoric moment of when it gets to your target. You just let it do what it's going to do. Because until the trade closes in your favor, you're not profitable. Trying to live in that moment where you're watching a level that you're hoping it gets to, try not to live in that moment ahead of its delivery. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to escape the uncomfortable uncertainty of, is it really going to go where I want it to go? You have to be indifferent to it. You got to just relax and let it go where it's going to go. That way, if it's going to give you indications that it's not going to go, you're going to be more receptive to it. You'll be able to see that versus hoping and praying and panic and just, it's torment is what it is. When you're in a winning trade and you don't have a model, that's torment. If you've ever had a time where you made money, either trading real money or a demo account or a funded account challenge or funded account, any degree of where your outcome is being measured for the basis of being right or wrong with monetary reward or clout associated to it. You have a vested interest in being right at the end of it. And your target, your take profit, is that report card. It's the measurement of you being correct. And if you hold your trades to that measurement every single time while you're in them versus, is the market doing everything that would allow me to trust this continuing? That's what you're constantly feeding yourself. Is it doing everything that is indicating that it would still be okay despite it not going as quickly as I would like to see it go to? Because that's a part of development that's very, very hard to articulate as a teacher, is letting the trade pan out and not wrestling with it, not trying to force, I just wish it would just let me get my target because I can get away from this. I'm worn out, because you don't know how to manage yourself. You're discovering that you aren't equipped to be trading with the outcome being so impactful. It takes money from you if you're wrong, but you don't know what it feels like to be on a trade where you're actually winning, because you don't know why the trade's winning, and you're afraid to get it out of it. And you're afraid that if you get out at your take profit, what if it goes more? Or what if it goes against me right now and I could close it when I'm up $3,000 or whatever the amount would be? So when you have these things going through your mind, they're all distractions. That's exactly what a neophyte is experiencing. A neophyte is always worried about the things that they shouldn't be worried about, instead of focusing on the things that they should be, which is watching price. Is it behaving? Is it supporting the underlying narrative that puts you into the trade? Now, if you start at square one where you don't have a model, you just impulsively chase price, then you shouldn't be surprised that you have anxiety. You shouldn't be surprised that you're uncomfortable being in the trade, because you don't know what you're looking for. You don't know what you're waiting for. You're not looking for anything that you've measured in the past. So why should you have any surprise about why you're feeling uncertainty that's now turned into an adrenaline release, and then now cortisol released, and you're in full-blown panic, which paralyzes you? You ever have that, it's called the gambler's numbness. You've lost a lot of money. You're at the verge of blowing your account. You're blowing your funded account, or you just did. And if you had more money in the account, you'd still trade again and not feel anything. That's a terrible experience to be in, because you completely unplug. The rational thinking part of you is just like it's almost like being catatonic. You're just pushing the button. You don't care what the outcome is. You just feel like you have to push the button. That's insanity as a trader. I've experienced that a lot as a 20-year-old. I was in shell shock when I lost lots of money that I didn't have. I didn't have that kind of money. I had to work very hard to get these things scraped up to put into those accounts. And when I blew them, it was bad. It was really bad. And I didn't have the skills I have now. I don't have the ability to wrestle into subjection the intrusive thoughts, the what if thinking. What if it does this and what if it does that? If you don't have your model defined and you don't know what makes that trade setup viable, why should it form where you expect it to go in and take a trade? Why should it even be doing any of that? If you don't have experience collecting that information, that data, by watching old price moves that have already completed, getting a large collection of that, Caleb. And that's what we're doing when we do these end of the day observations. I'm annotating the chart. with what I see and what I watched with real-time price action. These are things that I was measuring and looking at as price was delivering, because that's how I read price. I want you as my son to learn how to do it that way. Now you're going to have your own little things in all the things that I'm annotating, and your eyes are going to jump to something that says, that's the setup that I feel I can see it easy. Like I can see it forming. I can see it developing all the time, and it has these same characteristics that repeat over and over and over again. When you have that, that's an epiphany. That's an aha moment. That's I see something I've never saw there before, and it's exciting. And whatever that is for any of you listening, that's where you first start. You start there. We're inside that little inefficiency here. I like to see it create a institutional order flow entry drill, which is a partial fill of that and then dump down into the mid gap. It's very liberating when you have, number one, control over yourself, and that is going to be acquired by you having a model that you've seen in old moves that repeats over and over and over again. Now, it may not form every single day for you, but if it happens 3 times, 4 times a week, that's a wonderful model. But if you work in these lower time frames, which is kind of like what I'm forcing Caleb's perspective today with, is that there's lots of opportunities and you need not chase price. You need not chase the expensive premium pricing that they are throwing to the public. They're literally just throwing slop out there into the open mouths of just retail traders that just simply say, it's probably going to keep going up, bro. Like, I got to buy it. I'm not trying to do that. I don't want to do that. And there you go. There's your half gap. So is it happening in the first 30 minutes? No, but it did trade down to mid gap. Did it give a fair value gap in institutional order flow entry drill? Some kind of premium array to get short between this low and that upper quadrant to get down to here? Yes, institutional order flow entry drill there. Delivered. You're never going to be short of supply of setups once you know what you're doing, folks. There's no reason, zero reason for you to have any anxiety about missing moves, feeling anxious about chasing price. When it was doing all these things up here, everything was just a story time. Just sit back and let it tell you what it's doing. Relax. Let it really prove that it wants to take a run below the initial lows formed here. Remember? I told you I was watching this up in here. There's inefficiency, and halfway part of that right there, that's this. We want to see it roll over and get heavy. Go back. It's in a live stream, folks. I was not trying to be long today, and it's boring to me. I can sit out here every single day and call every major move, every single one of them, but not every single one of those moves are a trade that I want to put money on. I don't want to trade just for the sake of trading. That's maturity. That's a mindset that you should aspire to have. That means you have control over yourself. You have a measure of self-control that's alien to 99% of every trader, even those that have been trading profit for a long time. But today I described to you that we had that very large opening range gap here, which you have to see it with RTH, which is regular trading hours. But this is the opening range gap. And since we opened up here, I told you we were going to work inside that weekly inversion fair value gap. And you don't want to try to pick the highs, because there was a lot of range where it could have went up into mid part of that weekly inversion fair value gap, which is essentially around in here. So you got to let it prove to you that it's done enough and break down. So we were watching this low here. It did so. And I gave you the framework about how this gap below this low here, I wanted to see a premium array form between this low and this upper quadrant. Between this little area right in here, that's where my setup would form. My PD array would form in this area right here. Institutional order flow entry drill over here. It breaks lower in that area, comes right back up in here, boom. And I told you when we were right there, go watch the live stream during the 10:30 to 10:36 time. I said, I'm watching this right here. When I do that, whenever I say when I'm watching something during the live streams, that's a wonderful opportunity for you that are watching live or when you watch the old recording. Stop and pause the video and screenshot that. Think about what you see in price, what it might do after that moment. And you got one of the best learning opportunities, because it's like, okay, freeze frame, boom. Why is he interested? What should it do? And then, like I said, let's see it roll over from there and stay heavy and work towards that mid gap. Does it do it? Look at the bodies. Look at the bodies, how it behaved inside that little, and see that little volume imbalance there. We have to make sure we keep that. There's that halfway point. That price is 18,583.75. What's that candlestick's high right there? 82.50, 84.75. So 1 point, one handle above. That's the only heat that had by watching that mid level of that SIBI, and it rolls over. All live in front of you, explain to you the logic. That's where the setup's going to form. I know where my setups are going to form. I know what the algorithm's going to do, how it's going to book price. I know all those things, but I have to let it do its manipulation. I don't want to force myself to be in something. I told you, this is all building in a premium. It's engineering liquidity. Every time it made a new high, someone's taking the other side of that when it stops being taken. So buy stops above this high are absorbed there. Shorts, smart money are selling that buy stop. and they're buying a breakout retail. Who wants to be the other side of that? Smart money. They're selling to those buy stops here. And then above here, boom, they're selling short to those buy stops again. All of this is building in a premium, and they're selling it to the public. I'm waiting for it to get down to here to give the setup to trade down to the mid gap. And there it is. Small little retracement, digging down. So now you want to look at the lower quadrant. Overstayed my welcome. Here's the lower quadrant. So you want to watch and see, does it trade into that price level right here?